Welcome and welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about acceleration and kettlebell ballistics, where you should accelerate and why it even matters. We come to this because we were coaching somebody the other day and they were going up in their bell weight for a snatch and we noticed an issue with the lockout. We'll kind of bring it into perspective based on how we evaluate and where we evaluate as far as the ballistic in general and how we get to the conclusion to help them.
Sure.
So where do we start, Roger?
We have a 3-zone system. We work each zone 1, 2, and 3, and we always start with zone 1. Zone 1 is about accelerating the kettlebell. Zone 2 is about redirecting the kettlebell, and zone 3 is about the lockout or finishing whatever skill you're working on. This really helps us rather than going right after the lockout. Sometimes you can give someone a quick tip, but generally you don't know where the problem is. You got to start with the foundation. So we start with zone 1. So what do we have to look at? Well, we have what we call a zone of acceleration. It's where the bell actually accelerates. And that's a finite zone, and we're going to get into that. But the first thing we want to talk about is what is acceleration? Why does it matter? So the first thing we need to touch on is the force equation. You see the force equation, force equals mass times acceleration. You see it a lot in fitness. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just some random letters and it doesn't have any context.
You skip right over it.
So let's talk about what that means. So force is the thing that you're going to use to apply, or you're going to apply that to the kettlebell to get it to do what it is you want it to do. So in this case, a snatch. So you need to apply force to a kettlebell to get it to move. So the things that make the force up, we have to look at the mass, and then we have to look at the acceleration.
Okay.
So first thing we need to think about is, one, what is the mass? Now, in this case, a lot of people are looking at the mass of the bell. That's not incorrect. There's nothing wrong with that. You can see how much force is actually moving into the kettlebell, and that's going to matter. In this case, though, we're looking at the mass of the human being moving the kettlebell. We're less interested in making a kettlebell swing or snatch and more interested in connecting that kettlebell to a human, making the human move with as much of that human's mass as possible, and then transferring that force from the human into the kettlebell. That's I think a more practical way to look at it. So that's where the mass part is. Acceleration is not speed. A lot of people look at it as a finite set point. Speed is just how fast something is going. How fast does it go from here to here, and how long does that take? Acceleration is different. Acceleration is about change. So let's look at the most common acceleration you're going to see in the fitness world. We talk about gravity because we're always under the influence of gravity. So
you can drive under the influence of gravity, just so you know.
I don't recommend that.
Oh, okay.
So when we look at acceleration of gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared, we're just going to round up to 10 just because it's easy. So we know that you've got the 10, okay, meters per second squared, so it's per second. So for every second, if you're starting with that 10 in second 1, by the time you get to second 2, you've got 20. By the time you get to second 3, you've got 30. So when you're looking at the equation, so whatever mass is, that's going to be a constant value. So let's say that's 10 for 10, whatever, who cares? 10 times 10, 10 times 20, 10 times 30. As you go second by second by second, something that's accelerating for 3 seconds is going to have a lot more force in a given equation than something that's only accelerating for 1 second.
Right.
Okay. Is that clear? That makes sense?
It seems pretty clear.
So let's look at a real world example. Okay. This is an example. I don't remember where I got it, but it was the example of a paint can being dropped on your foot. So let's say you're at the paint store, you need some paint. Okay?
Got it.
One of those big old gallon things.
Right.
And you're picking it up off the floor.
Okay.
And you're really close to your foot. Let's say you drop it.
Oh.
How's your foot feel?
It's a little like in the cartoon, it's a little
maybe
not too
right,
bad.
but you're probably fine.
Yeah.
So if we take the same paint can, let's say you're getting it off a high shelf,
okay,
it slips out of your hand.
Oh, okay. Snap!
Your foot's probably shattered.
Flat, like in the cartoon.
What happened? Well, the paint can had time to accelerate. Okay, and in order for something to accelerate, you need the time and you need the distance. That's another way to look at it. You know, we can't always look at time with kettlebells. It's more convenient. It's easier to look at distance because you know, as long as that kettlebell is continuing to speed up, okay, or change its speed and accelerate, then you know more time and more distance are going to be a good thing. So when we look at acceleration, we want to think about how much time and or distance does something or someone have to accelerate? You take the fastest human in the world, they're not going to be able to go from a dead stop to their fastest. Okay, I don't care who you are. You can't go
0 to 100.
It doesn't
like in the
it doesn't
instant.
work. You need time. You need distance. So whatever that distance is, in order for you to get up to that top speed, you're going to require some. So we want to make sure with kettlebells that you're giving someone enough distance in order for that bell to get faster, in order for that bell to accelerate. Okay, are we good here?
So far, so good. You need more distance to get a faster acceleration.
Well, more time. But distance gives you time.
We do distance. Yes, okay.
Distance gives you time. So if we're looking at what that zone is, practically, it's going to be a finite distance. Okay, so go ahead and turn to the side and just go ahead and stand up with the arms connected to your body. So we want, for form purposes, to get more mass of this human to move the imaginary kettlebell, right? Mm-hmm. We want to have all of that mass moving that bell as much as possible. So he's going to use the biggest, strongest muscles in his body. He's going to use his legs to help accelerate his torso. Mm-hmm. Once he reaches vertical, that force that goes from the ground all the way up into his torso is going to be transferred to his arms. Now, the point at which the bell is going to become ballistic is the point where his arms are lined up right there. So it's not completely, you see there's a little bit of a gap because his arms are obviously going to be in contact with his torso, and that has depth. Okay, if you look at me from this side, this is where eye contact with a 2-arm swing. With a 1-arm swing, I can get a little bit closer, but either way, your rib cage has dimension, so sometimes you can't get completely flat. But if we're looking here, this is going to be the front part of his zone. Go ahead and go back. Now, he's pretty flat backed here, but you can see where his hands are. That's going to be the back part of that zone. Now, is this going to be his ideal form? Probably not. Now, it's going to depend on why. You can go ahead and stand up. It's going to depend on why are you swinging? What is your objective? Is this are you training an athlete? Are you training yourself for an athletic competition? Are you looking to do endurance? Are you looking to do power? Yeah. Right? There are a lot of variables. So you're going to find your ideal stance. So let's get into what would be your ideal swing stance. Okay. So you see here, he's not as flat backed, right? So the front of his zone is going to be somewhere right around the front of his toes, right between his toes and his midfoot. Go ahead and stand up, just let's verify that. Yeah, so if he's pointing straight down, it's gonna be somewhere right around there. And then I'm gonna look and see where his hand is. So that's going to be the area over which the bell will accelerate. Now granted, there's a handle and the bell's gonna come back out here, but the actual acceleration part is going to take place in that zone. Now, if something disrupts that zone, if the arm comes out of contact with the body, if let's say the bell goes into the backswing and then it flips up and then it flips down and it doesn't right itself and allow you to pull it until halfway through that zone, you're missing out on some distance, you're missing out on some acceleration, right, at that time. So the first thing we want to look at is how deep are you getting in that zone, okay? So is the zone appropriate? So let's say you're all the way up here and I see a problem with the lockout, and he's going for a heavier bell. Now, heavier bells are gonna require more knee bend in most cases. So I'm either gonna say, let's see if we can get you a little deeper, okay, a little hingier, or if he can't do that, because if you do that with a heavy enough bell, it's gonna pull you onto your ass, and you don't want that. So maybe I'm gonna have him get a little more knee bend. Either way, what I'm doing is giving that bell more distance, which means more time and more acceleration. So I'm gonna find the right zone for him, and then I'm gonna make sure that bell is hitting that. Okay, so I want to maximize the zone. I want to extend it, and then I want to maximize it. So then I'm looking at, okay, what's going on with the bell? Right. Is the bell hitting your leg? Is it twisting? So if at that, let's say we're doing a 1-arm swing, and this is really common for people. Sometimes they'll swing too close to the center, or sometimes they can't get around their legs, or they've got too much rotation. Some is going to be normal, but if that bell is going back and it's turning this way, then it's going to have to spin that way before you can really get that acceleration. Otherwise, the sagittal plane acceleration, some of it's going to be absorbed by that transverse plane, right? So that's going to slow things down. So I'm looking at what's happening to the bell in the back. Okay, is that bell flipping? Is it rotating too much? What's going on there? And then I want to see, is he pulling right away? Now, once he's all the way back here, he can't pull right away. He doesn't have great access to the glutes yet. When you're all the way back here, you're going to get a lot of stretch and a lot of reflex. So that's going to happen, but right around there, that's when he's really going to be able to accelerate that bell. Now, sometimes people will try to push their hips into the bell all the way from the back, and it'll be kind of a scoopy thing. You've got to get deep into that and let that stretch happen. If you're really going to maximize the elasticity of the movement and you're going to really maximize that acceleration. But what you're really thinking about doing is applying force to the ground right about there. That's going to keep you in that zone. That should be your cue whenever that bell is there, and you can look down and see it. Don't do that every time, but you can a couple times. When that bell is in that zone, that's your window. That's your ideal time to just crush the floor.
Push.
Okay, you're pushing that floor away. You've got knees. The knees are extending. The hips are coming forward and extending. That's going to be your ideal spot. Okay, so the third thing we're going to look for is the arm to body contact. So in this case, what I saw is someone, especially when they bell up, they can be very conscious of the bell. So they started pulling with the arm. And if you look here, he's pulling the bell away from the body. Okay, why does that matter? Let's go back to that force equation. So force equals mass times acceleration. We're not looking in this case at the mass of the bell. We're looking at the mass of the human. So we want more of the human accelerating that kettlebell. And when this connection comes away, some of that force will go away. The mass, it's not as much mass. The arm starts to be the thing that accelerates the bell. You're not going to get as much force that way. So you really want to maintain that contact as much as possible.
Yeah, and that makes it harder when you pull that arm away from the body.
Sure.
Yeah, and if you wonder if you do it, take a video.
For sure.
And slow it down and just see, does your arm start to creep away? You can still keep the connection up here, and like we said before, you may have some separation here, but once you start to disconnect here, you're really going to lose a lot of that.
That's really where I'm looking is the elbow on. You'll get a little bit of play here. You don't want all that, but if you get that, I'm not so worried. But the second this comes away, that's when I know someone's disconnected. So just to recap that, I know it seems like a lot, but these are very, very simple concepts. If we're looking to analyze form, whether it's our form or someone else's, then we need to figure out force application, okay? Rather than starting with, my coach said when the bell's banging at the top, I'm gripping too tight. Maybe.
Yeah.
It may be the case, and if that's the case and someone can identify that, cool. But we always look at from the ground up, because I'm not coaching the lockout if someone doesn't have the acceleration right. So we start from the ground up. We understand the force equation, so we understand how to get as much acceleration out of our kettlebell as possible. Okay, so we're looking, where is that? Where we'll get someone in the right stance for the swings that we're training. The right adaptation. It's going to be different with power, with endurance, with one athlete versus the other.
Yeah.
The stances are going to vary. So then what we're going to do is okay, let's get their zone maximum. Let's figure out, okay, this is where you're going to be. And then we're looking at what's happening to the bell in the backswing. When is someone applying force to the floor? And are their arms staying in contact with their body? Once we do that, then, okay, we're squared away. Let's see, did the bang at the top change? Yes, cool, we're done. We didn't need to start at the top. No, it did not. Okay, then we move on to the next zone, and then we need to know what those problems are going to be. And then if there's still an issue, which there never has been, I've never actually seen a lockout problem be a zone 3 problem. It's always been a zone 1 or a zone 2 problem.
Right.
Because whatever you do in the first 2 zones usually sets you up for success in order to get the lockout down. So
cool.
That's it.
That's it. All right. So that is some interesting stuff. Inch by inch, I think, is where it matters in this. And what we want you to do is we want you to find your zone. Go back, watch the part. It'll have like the highlights of where my zone is, and you can kind of film yourself and see where you can get your zone at. And then pay attention to that when you go into your next ballistics practice. And if you have any questions or comments, of course, we'll take them down below.
We will.
Through wherever. You know how to find us. And use the Bells app.
Oh, the Bells app.
The Bells app. Check it out. Download it for your iPhone. And Android, we got you covered sooner or later. But right now, we still only just got iPhone. Anyways, hit us up with anything you got. And like always, stay accelerating the bell
Sure.
strong.
You did it. I did it.
Okay,
Can't do
it's done.
first.
All
Can't
right,
do
see
first.
ya.